Welcome to the Vincast, Australia's #1 podcast dedicated to the world of wine. Every Tuesday, I try and bring out a new episode of the show with another amazing guest. And as soon as I do, with people downloading the episode, I managed to get into the top 10 of the food category of podcasts in Australia. And a really fantastic way to help me get the word out about the podcast and reach new listeners is when people do actually subscribe and download via the different podcast sharing apps and programs like iTunes, and particularly when they subscribe and leave a rating and review. So you can actually help me to grow the podcast and reach more people by simply leaving a rating and a review. I really do appreciate it. And also, it's fantastic to hear from listeners to give feedback to myself, to potential listeners, and more importantly, to potential guests. So thanks, guys, for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoy it. On episode 109 of the Vincast, I chat with Ashley Ratcliff, someone who has worked for a number of the most important wine producers in Australia in many different roles and has now thrown himself 100% into growing alternative grape varieties in the Riverland region of South Australia under his Ricca Terra Farms brand. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Vincast. My name is James Gasbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino, and as always, guys, thank you for joining us for another week. Before we get started on this week's episode, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for all their support of my different digital content, whether it's my podcast, my YouTube channel, my blog, or even some of my social media channels. I really do appreciate and I'm grateful for the support because, as previously mentioned, I was a finalist for Digital Wine Communicator of the Year in the Wine Communicator of Australia Awards. I went up to Sydney last week. It was just really humbling to be considered in really fantastic company. And I was actually a previous guest of the podcast, Jane Thompson, who was the winner of the award. And really, she has done absolutely sterling work in the past year in particular, not just with the Fabulous Ladies Wine Society, but particularly for the Australian Women in Wine Awards, which actually celebrates the awards tonight, the night of the podcast becoming live. So tune in, I think from about 6 o'clock onwards. There's going to be different events going on around the country. I think they're trying to get 100 different locations, something like that. So keep an eye on social media and really do congratulate Jane for the amazing work she has done in the digital sphere of wine communication. But yeah, like I said, thank you guys for all your support. It's really rewarding to be recognized, but also just to get some fantastic feedback from you, the listeners. So please do get in touch with me if you'd like to let me know if you enjoy the podcast, if you want to suggest a guest you might want to hear, or if you'd like to just say hello, you can actually get me on email, thevincast@gmail.com, and come and visit me at intrepidwino.com. So for this week, someone that I've really wanted to talk to for quite a long time is Ashley Ratcliff. He is become very firm and fast friends, and particularly he's a bit of a viticultural hero of mine because he is working with alternative grape varieties, particularly Italian grape varieties, which I make no bones about that I have a great love affair with. And so I was really, really grateful to be able to sit down with him whilst we were both at the Alternative Varieties Wine Show in Mildura recently and chat about his background. He's worked in lots of different parts of the wine industry and is really, really making some amazing strides in a very maligned region. He's very proud of the Riverland region, so he wants to show that it can produce really high quality grapes. So I hope you enjoy our chat, and if you did, please stick around till the end to find out how to get in touch with either of us. But until then, I'll see you on the other side. Ashley, we are sitting on the banks, kind of the Murray River here in Mildura, on a lovely sunny Saturday morning, late in the week here at Alternative Varieties Wine Show. I'm feeling very dusty, but we pushed through. Thank you very much for sitting down with me on the Vincast.
That is a pleasure, James.
And you may know I typically start every episode of my podcast by asking my guest if they can remember if there was a particular interaction with wine that sort of set them on a path of wanting to work in the wine industry.
I can't think of one thing in particular, but I do remember as about a 6-year-old being in the back of my dad's Sandman Holden vehicle, and he left a flagon of Riesling in there, and my brother and I started to have a bit of a drink, and so we picked up very early in life an understanding of wine.
How much of the flagon was left by the end?
Still a fair bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your dad didn't notice?
No, we didn't. He did notice, but because we fell out the back.
Where did you grow up?
Adelaide Hills.
Oh, really? Okay. And your family wasn't involved in the wine industry at all?
No. My parents met in Scotland Yard.
What do you mean?
In England, not in the right side. My dad was a detective.
Oh, okay.
And I think my mum was reception girl or something.
Right.
A reception woman.
And they're both English?
They're both English. I was born in Essex.
Oh wow, okay.
Yes, it came over when I was very, very small to Australia.
What brought them over here?
I don't know. I think maybe something might have gone down at Scotland Yard that they had to get out quickly.
Okay, got out of Dodge.
Yeah.
So you when you were growing up in Adelaide Hills, was there much wine being made there?
There was. We had a farm. We had about 150 acres, and we had just sheep and cattle. I rode horses a lot. We rode a lot of horses, so that was always good. Really good growing up as a kid. Always, running around, getting in trouble. Had a lot of freedom. But then when I met my wife Holly, we decided to plant a vineyard, an acre vineyard of Chardonnay. That's the reason I married her, because she could plant a really good vineyard.
Okay.
She was very good at digging holes and putting vines in, so I thought she's a keeper.
But why? How did you get interested in wine? And were you working in the wine industry at that point?
Actually, it's a long story. My first job, studied agriculture at Roseworthy. My first job was I was a broiler house farm manager for Ingham's Chickens, and my mate said to me, "What are you doing in working in the chicken industry?" And I said, "Well, I don't really like it." So he got me a job with a company called Farmer John's in the Barossa as a field agronomist, and of course, the crops I looked after were grapes and cherries and apples and etc. And then, in a matter of 18 months, when the wine industry boomed, I was employed by Orlando as a grower liaison. So that was back in 1992, I think.
Okay. And there would have been a lot of vineyards being planted. The demand for wine grapes.
It was nowhere near. The 90s was an amazing time. People thought that there would never be this bust in the wine industry. It was just, it was almost, going upwards at a rate of knots. So it's a good time. So that's how I really got involved with then I studied viticulture, and then I went on and studied marketing down at Monash University.
In Melbourne?
Yeah. Did a master's in marketing and wine technology at Monash.
Okay. So when you were working as a grower liaison, were you working across a lot of different regions? Did you get an opportunity to sort of...
Yep, mainly in South Australia. So it was really the Riverland, Barossa, Clare, McLaren Vale, Coonawarra South East. And then when I was with Yalumba, a bit of King Valley and those sort of places. So yeah, a lot of areas. Griffith, spent a lot of time in Griffith, like Griffith. Mm-hmm.
As a grower liaison, did you like working with the families, the farmers?
Yeah. I just like the farming families, and they're just good people.
Yeah.
Frustrating sometimes, but generally most of them are really good.
There's that honesty and that fairly sometimes simple attitude towards things you can butt heads sometimes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And were you drinking more? Like, were you trying to
during the day when I was seeing the growers, or
no, just in general, just at home?
Yes. Always, wine's been a big part of our lives. So I've always had an appreciation for wine. Mm-hmm. Probably not as much as I don't get. I like wines that are just easy drinking, I think on a scale of 10, I would, in regards to wine appreciation and wine super passion, I'm probably sitting at about a 7.
Okay.
You know,
That's good, but
yeah, I think 7. I mean, I don't really get too excited when this, a great label comes out.
Mm.
I mean, I like bag and box as well.
Yes. You mentioned that yesterday at the Talk and Taste. But so when did you start working for Yalumba?
14 years ago.
Yeah. And where did you start doing there?
I was the technical manager for viticulture.
Okay.
And then I went into an agribusiness manager's role, looked after grower liaison, looked after vineyards, had a role with the nursery managing the marketing and sales for a bit, and then went on to run the Oxford Landing Winery, which is a 36,000 tonne winery, and then went into manage the bottling and logistics. And then last Thursday, that was it.
Yeah.
I'm now just sitting on the side of the river.
Freelance.
Yeah.
Was it a big change going from Orlando Wyndham, it was corporate by that point?
Yes, definitely.
To obviously quite sizable, but still a family-owned wine business. Was that?
Well, between Orlando and Yalumba, I actually worked for a group called Kirribilli as a grower liaison, and I noticed this, recognised this, that while I had some technical skills, I really felt my deficiency was on hands-on. So I had the opportunity to put in 700 acres of vineyard in 1 year at Langhorne Creek, and when I had the opportunity to do that, I just took it and thought, right. So it was an interesting. I think I was in that role for 2 years. And learn a lot, because 700 acres in 1 year is a hell of a lot of vineyard, and it's just managing people and supplies. And then ended up going from, and when I was at Kirribilli, ended up going on to be their group agribusiness manager, so looking after customers and of investors. Ended up setting up a business as a contract grower liaison for Casella Wines, and that's really before Yellowtail really took off. So I was looking after all the grape intake in South Australia, here in Mildura, and some of the larger customers for John Casella in Griffith. And then I went to Yalumba.
Yeah. Okay. So, what did you particularly enjoy about working in the vineyards? Like, as far as viticulture, why did you connect with that?
Well, I've always liked farming. It's my passion. I always, as a kid, growing stuff. Veggies. So I've always wanted to get into farming. So I don't know, just the lifestyle, the people. There's a certain level of satisfaction when you can grow something. I mean, we've had meals sometimes at home where we've grown and made everything. And that could be the wine, or the or the vegetables, everything. There's quite a satisfying feeling, though, that everything on the table we've produced ourselves. Very rare we do that, but we do it from time to time.
Absolutely. Tell me about the marketing studies. Like, why did you decide to go off and do those studies?
What did I do there? Well, a lecturer at the time at CSU, when I did my Viti degree, said, "Why don't you should come down to Monash and see what courses that they offer." And I saw one in marketing. I've always liked marketing. I've had a real interest in buyer behaviour and all that sort of stuff. So I was really fortunate when I was working with Yalumba, because I was very supportive of people, expanding their horizons and their knowledge. And so for me to go into a study marketing, obviously that doesn't fit into viticulture, but they supported that, and I loved it. I think if I could go back and do my career again, I think I'd probably go down the marketing route. I really love marketing. I just think it's just amazing. A lot of people don't give it the credit that it's needed. I mean, it's just it is a science and an art of making something and putting a brand on it and getting people to actually fall in love with that brand.
It's something that we do take for granted, and you don't realise that almost everything you do is marketing related. You have to think, and just the act of thinking about your customers and how they might be responding to your brand. That is probably the most important marketing you can do. Yesterday, obviously, we both sat in on the talk and taste element of the wine show here in Mildura, and Larry Lockshin, spoke about branding, and I did sort of have some flashbacks to my wine marketing, wine business studies at Adelaide University. But, with a lot of these small producers, they don't realise that everything they're doing is marketing. Everything, anything that the customer can actually connect with is marketing, and you have to think about how your brand is being communicated, and that everything you do does communicate that. So you had a fairly diverse tenure at Yalumba. Did you really appreciate the opportunity to work in different elements of that business?
Yeah, look, they're I can't really put into words that they're an amazing company and an amazing family that owns them, and to have as a viticulturalist to where my heart is, to have been able to run a winery and understand how wineries work and the complexities of managing a large winery, to go to bottling and packaging, which it's really it's the unsung hero of our industry. No one really wants to get into, not many people want to get into bottling and packaging because it's just vintage every day of the year, and there's so many things that can go wrong. So to actually have that experience under my... we were at dinner last night and I saw this odd bottle come across the table, and the first thing I thought about was sitting next to Bruce and Jenny Chalmers and saying, oh my God, that would be a nightmare bottling that wine. So you sort of... you do get a new appreciation of how difficult it is from growing the grapes to actually putting that wine onto a table.
Yeah. So when was the first time you planted your own vineyard?
We started, our first vineyard we bought was 2003.
Okay. Where was that?
In the Riverland.
In the Riverland?
Farmer. Our first one we planted was our Chardonnay vineyard in Adelaide Hills, which was 1992 or 3, something like that.
Okay. What happened to that one?
It stayed there. My mum and dad sold the property, and we didn't have much consultation about the future of the vineyards.
Oh dear.
So, actually they bought another farm, and we actually nearly we were going to plant. My brother and I were going to plant Sauvignon Blanc on it, which would have been actually at the time would have been an absolute Monty.
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
We didn't do that, so we never became Adelaide Hills grape growers.
Right. Okay. So, what was it that brought you to the Riverland? Why did you decide to buy and then plant a vineyard?
Well, I've lived at 2 places in my life. One's been the Adelaide Hills, and the other has been Anguston in the Barossa.
Yep.
And I love the Barossa, and I'd love to have bought a vineyard there, but at 30, how old was I? 32, 33 years of age, we moved there. The idea of buying a vineyard was just out of our financial reach.
Yeah.
So I'd been in the Riverland quite a bit and decided that, this is when prices of Chardonnay were $900 a tonne. So the numbers looked really good to buy a vineyard in the river. So we thought, well, let's buy one. So we bought a vineyard, and it was 20 acres, and that's where we started. And at that stage, there was no idea whatsoever to plant alternative varieties. It was just, the numbers look good. Let's grow Chardonnay, Cabernet, and Shiraz, and do what everybody else was doing around us. So
you were basically what you were doing as a grower liaison. You were like, we're just going to grow grapes and then sell them.
Yeah, exactly right.
And the vineyard was planted to Chardonnay.
Yep, all the traditional varieties.
Okay.
Bit of Sultana. I remember the very first patch of grapes I picked was an acre of Sultana, and I was on the back of the harvester, and I think we picked 22 tonnes off an acre.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that's what I thought. God, it's a lot of fruit. But we pulled that out straight away because I don't think Sultanas were part of our long-term vision.
No. So this you bought that in 2002?
Three. Yep.
And then, not long after that, sort of the market changed, you would have to say. And so did that kind of impact on you and your decisions about what you want to do with the vineyard?
Yep, forced our hand really, and that's where the marketing side of things really kicked in, because I thought to myself, we can't continue to be growing. And I'll be honest, I had budget. I had worst case scenario of fruit getting down to maybe $500 a tonne. And I thought at $500 a tonne, okay, that's still okay. But when prices started to go past that point, I just thought to myself, we have to find a competitive advantage. We need to stand out a little bit. We need to be different from our neighbours. We realised that the issue with water was only going to get worse with availability. So we came to actually this wine show, and I came out of it thinking, this is the way forward. We need to look at things like alternative varieties and how we're managing our vineyards. So that's what we did. And and then I also thought, well, why can't, after going to Sicily and Apulia and etc., why can't we grow premium wine grapes in the Riverland? So that started the journey.
Okay. So it was here at the Alternative Varieties Wine Show that you would sort of first quite seriously introduced to Italian grapes and Spanish grapes, that kind of thing. So you travelled over to Italy and did some research?
After, we've our first two alternative varieties put in were Vermentino and Neradavla.
Okay.
And after planting those varieties and when they were getting established, we travelled to Italy a number of times just to get a bit of an idea of what how these varieties were growing in their homeland.
So, you talked about how important marketing has been. How did that sort of come into your mind when you were starting to make the shift away from very classic varieties to the alternative grapes?
Well, there's two things I looked at. Obviously, it's one thing to plant alternative varieties, but my view was how could I value add that? How could I let the world know? And I mean, we're so blessed these days having social media where you can, once upon a time you'd have to advertise through the newspaper or radio or television, which is extremely expensive, and it's gone in a flash. Now, social media gives you so much opportunity to tell your story. So the key thing was not only to plant these varieties, was to build the brand, and that's where I thought we've got to get some brand value, and that's where we came up with Ricca Terra Farms and said, okay, that brand needs to mean something, and for us it means that the brand for me is really about a family and a farm trying to make a difference in an industry and in a region, and that's what means a lot to us. I actually think, and I was talking to Larry yesterday about this branding, and said, look, to me the brand, the Ricca Terra Farms brand, I feel was more valued to me than the vineyard is.
Yeah. So what decisions did you make as far as how you wanted to work with these alternative varieties? Did you think about them in quite a different way, as far as, because no doubt irrigation was a pretty important thing. As we were walking down to the river, you talked about, the prices of water, and accessibility to it. So was that a big part of the decision making when you were converting over to the alternative varieties?
The key thing in the back of my mind, I always, spending a lot of time with winemakers, was that there was a perception about the Riverland being, a bulk wine, high crops. So as soon as you made mention, we're Riverland grape growers, it was, you're just Riverland, you're cheap and cheerful. So our approach was, okay, we're going to get winemakers coming into our vineyards. We want them to go, the first thing is, wow, this isn't what I expected. So it's all single wire, it's all hand pruned. This is of the alternatives. It's all VSP'd. We want people to walk out of that going, I didn't expect your vineyards to look like this. And then that started, and then we had people like, a number of winemakers starting to buy fruit from us. And then all of a sudden we noticed a lot of these winemakers were putting Ricca Terra Farms, or referencing our farm on their labels. So it became a bit of a snowball effect. So the key thing is, yes, the technical sort of stuff of growing, with the water and mulching and all that sort of stuff was important. But the very first thing on my mind is, how am I going to change my customer, being the winemaker's view of the Riverland and our vineyard? So we had to go back and grow premium grapes in a premium style.
So some of your early clients for the fruit, from the Italian grapes, they're considered some of the most dynamic wine producers. But a lot of the time they've come from fairly diverse backgrounds themselves, and they've been introduced to those varieties, whether they're from their native homeland in Italy. Do you think that was a really important part of the bringing attention to Ricca Terra Farms? People like former guests of the podcast, Brad Hickey from Brash Higgins, and Brendan and Laura Carter from Unicozello. Do you think that was really important for them, to come in and really try and do something different, and that brought quite a bit of attention to the Ricca Terra Farms brand?
Without question. I mean, look, the one of our very first customers, is about trust. I mean, all of a sudden, if it's like that third-party endorsement, and if Brad Pitt's, wearing your watch, there's that's I want to look like Brad. So people go out and buy that type of watch. The person that really started it for us was probably Sue Bell. I mean, Sue's, we're very good friends, and I'm really proud of what she's done with that rosé. I mean, it is probably one of my favourite wines. I love drinking it. It's a nice wine, but Sue's so trusted and respected. So when she sort of got on board and said, "Yeah, look, we're going to make some wine from your grapes in the Riverland," I mean, she made a statement really to the industry that if I'm willing to do this. And then that wine, I think it was the first wine we made, won the trophy here for best rosé. So a lot of people took notice of that, and people like Brad Weir and Brendan and Laura and Sam Yu and De La Quente and Alex Russell. The list goes on. They all in their own way have helped support our brand, but also more importantly, what they've done is they've helped show the rest of the industry that the Riverland can actually make some pretty good wine if grown the right way and made the right way.
Absolutely. But I think, when you're talking about the fact that they were promoting Ricca Terra Farms and they were quite transparent about where the fruit was coming from, I think that's probably important because, as you mentioned, Riverland to a large extent has associations with, large volumes, very simple wines. So for them to, if they just put Riverland, people would go, But if they're saying, no, this is from Ricca Terra Farms, people kind of would take more notice and then think a little bit more about, how grapes can be grown in a different way in the Riverland. And I know that when 21st Century Vino was being run in Melbourne, unfortunately I wasn't able to attend, but I remember Brendan and Laura were coming into town. They said Ashley's actually set up, he's bought a booth to promote wines that have been made from grapes grown at Ricca Terra Farms. That was a pretty bold decision, do you think?
Yeah, look, we actually, on that event, we went down to Harry and Frankie's and we had a tasting there the night before. I mean, I think my role as a grower is more than just growing grapes. I need to make sure that my customers are selling wine. So I spend an enormous amount of time trying to do the marketing. Social media. Whenever I see one of our customers' wines written up, we retweet it. We're always sending and encouraging our producers to send wines to the journalists like Hugh and Hawke and Max and Jane, and always trying to help wherever I can to help them build their brands and their story. So I think it's really important that they all work. And unfortunately, is a lot of growers don't get that. They don't. They just think their job finishes when the grapes hit the weighbridge. And look, and the region, I love the Riverland, and it needs the region. The industry needs the big volumes. I mean, a winery like Oxford Landing, can't operate with alternative varieties. It needs large volumes of fruit to go through and good quality fruit. I mean, I love the Oxford Landing Sauvignon Blanc. Great wine. And I remember having an argument with a very well-known winemaker that you couldn't grow Sauvignon Blanc in the Riverland. And I said, well, you can. And they said, well, it's no good. And I said, well, look at Oxford Landing Sauvignon Blanc. It keeps going from strength to strength. Somebody likes that wine, so it's what they were saying was wrong, I believed.
Yeah. Did you think it was quite important, that relationship with your customer, which is the people who are buying the fruit and making wine from it, that you were both working together all the way along, from vineyard to the consumer, and did you appreciate the opportunities for things to work backwards and to receive that kind of feedback back through them and encouragement and no doubt, they would have said, oh, what about you grow this variety? I'm interested to make wines from that. Was that really important as well?
Yeah, look, it's that two-way communication and the respect is so important, and that comes from not only the people who drink that wine and the winemakers, but also people that help. I mean, it's not a one-man band at Ricca Terra Farms. I mean, I can't. There goes the train. I can't do that. So we've got Neil Borton and Luke Wagner who actually help run the vineyard. Holly does an amazing job running the behind the scenes, doing the bookwork. She keeps wanting to resign, and I keep telling her her performance reviews are outstanding, so she can't go anywhere. But look, that feedback from whether it be winemakers, whether it be people, even like yourself, sitting here talking and saying, look, have you considered this? I mean, I think the day that you become arrogant and shut up shop and not willing to listen is the day that you're going to start failing. So I try and soak as much information as I can in.
So, what sort of experience and how did your travels to Italy kind of feed into what you were doing in the vineyard?
For me, it wasn't so much about the grapes; it was about the culture. I really like that sort of the family, and I really like southern Italy more than northern Italy. I just like that rusticness about southern Italy and how the farmers sort of tended to their small patches of vineyard, and the kids were around and all that sort of stuff. And the trains, had good trains in Italy as well. Very quick.
It's interesting that you talk about that as far as the culture in Italy, particularly in the south. It's very simple, and you said that you like fairly simple, like honest wines. Do you think that also kind of influenced you as far as your tastes in wine? Do you appreciate those kind of wines from Italy as well?
Yes. I mean, without question. I mean, growing up in the Barossa, I like Shiraz, but I'm not really a big fan of these big alcoholic. Not saying there's so many great wines out of the Barossa, but that's the reason I like Italian and alternative varieties. I like the sort of lighter styles, simpler, more food wines that you sit down with a pizza or a sandwich, and that's the sort of wines I like. And I guess it's sort of me. I don't like being complicated. I just I like my shorts, t-shirts, and walking around with thongs.
Yeah, absolutely. And no doubt you kept coming back to the Alternative Varieties Wine Show. And obviously, you would have no doubt encouraged your customers to submit their wines into the show to sort of
That's right, yep.
to see how they go. And your involvement is going to become even more so because you're now going to be the president.
That's correct. Yes.
And that's also no doubt been a really fantastic resource for you and helping you make Ricca Terra Farms bigger and better and working better for the community.
Yep, I think this wine show is it's one of my favourite weekends of the year. I mean, there's Christmas. It doesn't always fall on the weekend, as you know. But this is probably I rate this probably better than if I was born a week later, I would have had my birthday at the Alternative Variety Wine Show, and wouldn't that have been great? I would have loved it. But look, this show has done so much for the Australian wine industry. And I was sitting next to Bruce and Jenny last night for dinner, and they didn't agree with me on this point, but they're wrong. I said to both Bruce and Jenny that they have saved so many families. I think if they didn't bring alternative varieties into Australia, I'm not quite sure whether I would still be in the industry.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of people that are probably in the same boat, and I don't know if they realise, what they've done. And so they're amazing people, Bruce and Jenny. I've got so much time for them, and got a lovely farm. And like I said, really, at the end of the day, if they didn't take that bold move when they did and bring these varieties in, I think the Australian wine industry would be a much poorer, a much less exciting place than it is today. So I think that this weekend's great. It is a great opportunity to encourage our customers' wines to be here, and and it is good for our business. There's no question. Being up here and mingling and talking to people, and that's where Brendan and Laura. Where we first met them was here, and I remember driving back, and Brendan gave me a telephone call and said, "Any chance of getting some alternative varieties from you?" And it really started out of this show.
Yeah, and I think what you talked about before, as far as that bubble of the '90s, and everything seemed good when the bubble did burst, and prices started to go down for grapes, and Australian wine sort of had to start to evolve and reinvent itself, and I think that's one of the more interesting ways that it's been doing that is with the alternative varieties, and I think that it is an opportunity for growers and for winemakers and for the people who actually buy the wines to see these alternative varieties in the context of the wine show, and it must also be a great opportunity for you and for your customers to see what other people are doing with it and what varieties look like in other regions.
Yeah, look, it's the Saturday morning tasting is a bit of a treasure chest. You can go in there and somebody's played around with a blend or made it in a certain way. And they may not always win medals or trophies, those wines, but you look at them and go, that's really interesting, that's really cool. So the top too many probably wine shows in the country, maybe not even in the world, where you get that opportunity to look at so many different weird and wonderful varieties. And you know, we spoke about it yesterday. I don't know if Brad Wiz put it in. We've got the Schlenker Manca Bella, and you know,
tell me about that story.
Oh, Schlenker Manca Bella. Yeah, it's supposed to be Grillo, and we planted it as Grillo. Coming back from Sicily, I fell in love with Grillo. Thought we planted Grillo, and then we were then informed that it wasn't Grillo, and then it was DNA tested, and then it was Grillo. We're told it was Grillo from Spain, and blah blah blah, and eventually we got the official results, which was it was a variety called Schlenker Manca Bella from the Balkans, and I thought, even when we were growing it just didn't look like Grillo from what we saw in Sicily. And I was about to pull it out, and I take Brad Weir to his credit, said, no, you know, Brad, he's a crazy cat, and he said, let's do something with it. So we had to thin it. It's a huge cropper. And we thinned it, and Brad made this sort of real textural sort of style wine, and it's good. You know, it's a nice wine, and I think it's the only Schlenker Manca Bella out in the market at the moment. So you know, it's a point of difference.
Certainly got a unique sales proposition. And so 14 years working at Yalumba, it's come to an end. You're able to completely throw yourself into your own endeavours. Mm-hmm. What's next for Ricca Terra and also for yourself? Other brands, other businesses?
We've our business works on, I guess, three ways. We've got the farm, which is 150 odd acres. So we're going to continue to remove things like Chardonnay and Colombard and replant with alternatives. We've got a new patch I call the Portuguese paddock, which is about, I don't know how many, it's 15 acres, and I think we've got nearly 12 varieties in there. So that's really exciting. We're actually going to put in some of the new CSIRO varieties in one patch. And there will be after we had a wine brand 14 years ago called Birchwood, and we exported that around the world. It wasn't a big brand; it was 2,000 cases. So we're going to launch a Ricca Terra Farms brand. We're very mindful that we don't want to compete with our customers, so we're going to take our time to make sure that we look different in our wine styles. One of the things that we've been doing over the years, and this is how wines like Sammy Wines got going, and also the field blend of Brad Weir's that he's currently got out at the moment, is we've been experimenting, putting varieties together, and they're making them into wine and just trialling them. And then because I couldn't have a brand when I was at Yalumba, we gave the wine away to friends. And I mean, last year Sam, he won 2 gold medals and a trophy with those wines that we just blended in the field. So we've planted vineyards with that in mind. So the Portuguese paddock, the whole idea of that is actually to go and put those varieties together. So we're forward planning. So there'll be a brand. And the other thing we've been doing is we just can't keep up with the supply. It's been amazing. So we actually have a really good group of growers that grow for Ricca Terra Farms. Yeah. And we want to continue to work with them. And that's been, to me, one of the greatest stories out of Ricca Terra, is that a lot of these growers were getting nothing for their alternative varieties. They might be getting, $180, $200 a tonne. And in some cases, these growers were going to rip this fruit out because, what was the point? And what's been really good is through Ricca Terra, we've been able to, our customers have come to us and we've said, okay, why don't we, as long as you're still under our brand, I keep that brand protection is really important for us. But I want you to grow the grapes in this fashion. I want you to do it this way. And we've worked together, and these growers are now getting really good money for their fruit. And it's a slow movement, but we're going to work more on that as well, as working with our growers.
Right. Okay. I can imagine that it is sort of encouraging for growers in Riverland to sort of see Ricca Terra and the customers of Ricca Terra Farms, getting quite a bit of attention. Whether it's here at the Alternative Varieties Wine Show, or whether it's in media, but also the end consumer. Do you really appreciate the opportunity to get out into the market and like you said, doing the tasting at Harry and Frankie's down in Melbourne? Do you like seeing the wines out there and talking to the people who are actually buying them in the shops?
Oh, I love it. I just absolutely. There's no better feeling that. The thing about grape growing is that you have to have a long-term vision. So you put a variety in. Let's say, for example, we're putting in some Touriga. I know in 5 or 6 years' time, when somebody's bought that's put in a label, someone's going to drink that and they're going to go, "Well, thank you for that. That's really nice. It might win an award." So the biggest thrill is actually looking at something, believing in it will work, executing it, and then actually seeing somebody really enjoy it at the end. And that's a very fortunate to actually be able to do that. So I love going out there and talking to people, and even when people say, "Oh, the wine's not that good," that's fine. Everybody's got their opinion, and sometimes some of our producers do some crazy stuff that people just don't like, but they seem to sell the wine. So,
well, it's funny you mentioned crazy stuff. Obviously, again, there was the branding, the packaging discussion yesterday at the Talk and Taste, and some of your customers have got some very, very bold labels. Do you think that's a really important part of their story? They're making bold wines from varieties that are fairly unfamiliar to a lot of customers, and then they put them in these really, really standout sort of bottles. What do you think that's a really important part of that as well?
Oh, look, it's probably my favourite label is Brad Hickey's Zabiba. I mean, that sun, it just stands out, and it's not a big volume wine, but it's amazing where
it sells out of it almost immediately.
It's everywhere, and even Sue's Ant series, and then you've got Della Quante's. Okay, it's not my sort of style of label, but Greg says people love it. So I think the good thing is that with those labels is that they're quite diverse, and I mean I love Brad Weir's all those artwork stuff, and people they pick it up and go, "Oh, we love that, it's really nice." So I think art in regards to the label of labels are they attract different types of people. So to have that diversity is really important.
And social media, I think, is also a really important part of that, because I'm sure that in a lot of cases people love taking a picture of those labels and putting them on Instagram. They are what I call very Instagrammable labels. And I mean, social media is a pretty important part of your business and your marketing. You mentioned before, whether it's the customers of the grapes themselves, or whether it's the consumers who are drinking the wines of your customers. Do you really appreciate the opportunity to use social media to connect with a much broader audience?
Oh, without question. I mean, as I said before, I mean, we are so lucky to have social media, because you can actually communicate with so many people and tell so many stories, and you can help your customers out, you can help the industry out, you can help the region out. And again, it's one of my frustrations has been that when you hear people going, "Oh, social media is overrated," or "I don't believe in social media," they're generally the people that don't have much to do with social media. It's so powerful, and you can be, we actually have, as a grape grower, we've actually sold quite a bit of fruit over through social media. We've tweeted or Facebooked or Instagrammed about one of our producers doing really well, and next thing you know, we get a direct message back, said, "Oh, do you have any more fruit?" And the thing is that every grower has that opportunity to do that, but they've got to create a story. And that's the thing about branding. We heard it yesterday. It's about the story, and it's about, so people and growers in particular, need to find that unique story about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ashley, we are, very much eating into our time to be able to taste all these wonderful wines. So I wanted to say thank you very much for making some time. Obviously you've been very busy the last 14 years at Yalumba, so it's nice to finally be able to get you on the podcast, and I really have appreciated talking to you today. For the listeners, what's the best way for them to follow Ricca Terra Farms online?
Well, we've got a website, which is... Holly says we don't use www. So it's just Ricca Terra.
You don't need to.
I know that. I'm a bit old-fashioned.
It's still there, but you don't need to put it in.
But I'm going to use it, www.riccaterrafarms.com.au, or through social media. So that's the best way to contact us.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, and I'm really excited to see how your customers have fared this year.
Well, let's hope they do well. We have to reconsider the situation if they don't perform. Thank you, James. It'd be great. Thank you.
And thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Vincast. I have been James Guestbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino. And please do reach out to Ashley if you'd like to just share your thoughts about this week's episode, if you'd like to thank him. But also, if you're interested in buying some grapes from him to make some wine in the 2017 vintage. And of course, shout out to all of the growers in the Murray-Darling Basin and in South Australia for the unfortunate weather event they had recently. Hailstorms really did devastate a lot of vineyards, so please throw some support their way. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Intrepid Wino, and also the podcast can be found on Twitter at The Vincast. You can find my Facebook page, facebook.com/Intrepid Wino. Like the page, check out some of the posts I've linked, and also some photos I'd shared. As mentioned, I have my YouTube channel, Intrepid Wino, where I post different video content, particularly my Let's Taste videos, where I've tasted quite a few wines from the Ricca Terra Farms grapes. And make sure you subscribed. Why don't like a few videos and leave some comments? I'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast because, as mentioned at the start of the episode, it's a great way to actually get the newest episode as soon as it becomes available. And also, it's a great way to provide feedback to myself and potential listeners and guests by leaving a 5-star rating and a review. All that information can be found at intrepidwino.com, and you can also find a way to get in contact with me there. But look, until next time, bye.